welcome to Bravo Boro's Backstage Pass. We're going to get a behind-the-scenes look at our production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm Dr. Spivey, and joining me today is Philip Storvik, who plays Chief. Philip, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
Good. Tell us a little bit about Chief. What's he like?
Oh, Chief is a little bit unlike most characters, I would say. He doesn't have a lot of on-stage engagement, but he has a lot to say about the overall progression of the show. To say he's a bit of a narrator, but has very few lines that interact with others.
In fact, in the movie, he's mostly silent, isn't he?
Yeah, he's almost completely silent in the movie.
And that's not quite going to be the case here.
Not quite. I mean, he's got a decent amount of monologues that kind of introduce the various scenes in the show, especially in the first act, and prepare the audience for what's coming.
What would you say would be the biggest challenge you faced playing Chief?
Being on stage for ages and not saying a word. Understanding where your blocking is supposed to be, where you would never say anything. Yeah, that would be part of the biggest challenge. I mean, not so much getting off book, but actually, okay, he says this. Okay, I need to be over here. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yes. As business, a lot of what they call in the trade business, is that where you're doing something in the background that makes you look engaged?
Things that, a big problem I think that a lot of people run into is when they don't have an active role on stage is to stay actively engaged in the scene. Dead eyes, for example, is one way to describe that. When someone is done with their lines, well, they just kind of go dead on stage and they're like a loose fish. You have to stay engaged with the scene, and that is the biggest challenge with Chief, is the majority of his time on stage is trying to stay engaged in a extremely limited fashion while still being in the scene.
Interesting. When did you first start performing?
High school.
What shows did you do then?
Somewhat accidental. The Dresser and The Merchant of Venice. Those are the two that come to mind. Really launched me into it. Prior to doing those shows involved in the Backstage, this was at the Web School, where at that time they still had this ancient, like Frankenstein era light board with big handles that threw sparks when you moved them. It was pretty cool.
So you were heavily involved in not only the on-stage part of the production, but also...
Yeah, I started off stage in the light booth.
What's been your most challenging role to date?
I would say mentally, that would be Otto Frank in The Diary of Anne Frank.
Yeah,
that was, well, it was more or less excruciating.
Understandable, quite. Do you have a particular style of acting that you use?
I don't particularly ascribe to a style of acting, but I've been told that I'm a method actor. And okay, so thinking about Otto Frank, the reason why that was so mentally challenging is because I tried to get in the mind of Otto Frank.
You actually put yourself in his shoes.
Yeah, and that, as you might imagine, is a fairly daunting thing to do.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Stare into the abyss, and the abyss will stare back.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has your career progressed from high school to today?
Strangely.
Tell.
After high school, you have the folks, oh, you should do this. You've got to go into college and do this. Well, I didn't. And then, I didn't touch theater for about 12 years. Until I did, and then was heavily involved in it for a little while, and then stopped.
Was there something specific that awakened it for you?
Actually, funnily enough, yes. In 2005, a friend of mine who I had acted with in high school, Ben Hornsby, he called me up at work, and he had called me a couple times previous, trying to get me sucked back in, unsuccessfully. And he said, okay, look, they've got this Shakespeare show, and they need a king and a drunk jester. And he says, I think you've probably got the pompous royal covered, but I can do the drunk gesture. And I said, thank you, and okay, why not? And from that point, you know, the whole family actually got involved, and that was my re-entry into community theater.
Do you plan to do future roles? And if so, do you have any in mind that you would like to do?
I do. I feel like I would like to take a measured approach to what I want to do, but I do want to stay involved. I have only a few roles that I think I might want, but I mean, as an overarching guiding principle, I think I want to do things that are very different from what I've already done.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
primarily.
Right. Well, we look forward to seeing you in the production. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to get your tickets for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. See, my friend Philip is the chief. Get them at bravoboro.com. The show opens Friday, April 22nd and closes May 1st. Friday and Saturday shows start at 7 o'clock. Sunday matinees at 2. We'll see you there.